Hello everyone, I'm going to take you through an epic knife build. It's one of my best. I'm starting with some existing Damascus I have. It's a pretty low layer count. I forged this out in a previous video. I'll have the link to that. You can click on it. And I have two pieces here. One has got a little more nickel in it than the other one does. These are 15N20 and 1095, and then the one that's going to be the handles of this butterfly knife is going to be 1095 and or 15N20 and 1075. And the handles have a little higher layer count. So the blade is going to be pretty bold pattern and a finer pattern in the handles. So I'm rounding off the edges. Now when you do in twist Damascus, you want to round these corners off. And you can see here I've rounded these corners off. You want it pretty clean because you can pull some material, some scale into the surface as you're twisting. So, and I'm going to flex these up. Put flex on them. Now here, it's not hot yet. So scale hasn't formed yet. So I'm going to flex these before the scale forms. Keep that steel really clean. And I'll be at or near forge welding temperature when I'm twisting. So you can see here, I have all the edges have been rounded over on those corners. So here I am. This is my first twist. You can see that flux is steaming. That's about forge welding temp. My custom made wrench here. And I'm just going to start making some twists. Now this is going to be the blade. This is the piece of steel that's going to form the blade. And you can see that I'm losing some scale there. It just falls off. You don't want that scale pulled down in. So in between each one of these twists, I'll clean it off with a wire brush. And to keep that from getting kind of pulled in, because I'll flatten these twists out. After I'm done, it'll get pressed down and drawn out into a bar. And so you don't want to press that scale and any of those oxides back into the surface. So it's important. You don't see it here, but I'm flexing in between each one of these heats. So I'll take a wire brush. I'll clean this off. Get it back in the, flex it up, get it back in the furnace. Now this is the second piece of steel. This is going to be for the handles. This is going to be rounded out and drawn out to a round bar. But I'm going to get more twists in this guy. I'm going to twist this at a pretty good, it almost looks like all thread when I'm done. You'll see the peaks of that. And you can see why I rounded those corners. If you can look there, if you don't round those corners, those peaks get really sharp and it can be an issue. It's a propagation point for cracking and delamination that can occur. So I'm alternating these pieces. One's in the furnace heating up. I'm twisting one. I'm throwing the other one in the furnace. And you can see I'm at forge welding temp here. So this is actually fairly easy to twist. It's not too hard. And my wrench has got me, I got plenty of leverage here. So, and the blade, I didn't do a real fine twist on the blade. I wanted that pattern to be a little bolder. And then the handles, I wanted a real fine pattern on the handles. So, and in between each one of these heats, I clean all the scale off and I reflux it up back in the furnace. So this was, when you're doing twist, the cleanliness and the edge prep is very critical. You don't want to get any of that scale down in there. So here's the final twist on the bar that's going to be the handle. And these bars came out very clean. I didn't get any inclusions. I didn't get any little, sometimes you can see once you're grinding through it after you've twisted it and drawn it out, you can see like these little hairline cracks. They can propagate off those little valleys. But I didn't have any of that. So here I am. This is the blade. This piece of steel is going to be the blade. After I've cleaned it up and refluxed it, I'm drawing this out. And so this came out really good. I didn't get any little propagation cracks off of those twists. I didn't get, and I will grind this back. This is just getting kind of squared up. I'm going to draw this out with my drawing dies. And I'm shooting for about, I think, 5/16 of an inch thickness. Now this is the second bar right here. This is going to be the handles. So I'm drawing, you can see I'm turning this. I got to round this. These have to be rounded. And I'm twisting it. And here's the bar. It's almost finished. I've drawn it out significantly. This is a pretty long piece now. And I thought you guys might appreciate a shot of this furnace here, just staring inside the furnace. Remember, if you look into the void too long, the void looks back. So keep that in mind. And so I'm a little bit of rounding here after I need to have some rounding dies in my press, and I do have them. I just was too lazy to put them in, but I'm just kind of rounding over these peaks and kind of working on getting this round. I'm going to machine this in my lathe. So this is critical that this be pretty round. So here's the blade piece that was drawn out for the blade. You'll see I'm parting it off here. And then I did a light test etch on this just to verify the direction of the pattern. So it's looking, this is exactly the look I was going for, guys. It's going to make a beautiful blade. Now here's the handles, or one of them. I do a light hand grind here just to get off some of those peaks, without using rounding dies. It doesn't come out perfect, but I'm lightly hitting some of these areas, just getting it ready for the lathe. Now, here it is in the lathe. I machined these down to 5/8 of an inch, or just under 5, so 0.615, I think, was the outside diameter of these when I was done. So just under 5/8 of an inch. And here's the 2 bars after machining on my lathe. So these are going to be the handles. These are going to get slotted, forming this butterfly knife. And there'll be some other machine work that'll be done on that. But here's the 2 finished bars. Now I did a little test etch to show you guys the pattern on this twist. Check this out. I love this twist pattern. I love it. It came out just beautiful. And these will be much darker. These are going to get Parkerized. But this was just a test etch just to show you guys the pattern. But the final product will be Parkerized. Now, I was going to forge this tip out and forge it, but I was concerned about the pattern kind of morphing. When you do that, you'll warp that pattern, and it might look cool, I don't know, but I cut this off because the pattern at the tip of this knife was so beautiful I didn't want to change it, so I just cut the tip off the grinder. And I did some finish grinding on my belt sander to profile that. So in here I'm milling out the handles. These handles, each one has a slot that gets milled down it. This was a little time consuming. Milling and machining Damascus is not the easiest thing to do, to be honest with you. It can be very tough on your cutters. You usually have to run carbide, and your feed rate has to be perfect. And so the depth of cut and the step over and all the little metrics with milling you need to have it dialed in pretty good. You'll break these cutters. These cutters will just snap off. And then once those were milled out, I center drilled. I did a mock-up with the blade inside the grooves, and I center drilled and then tap drilled for these handles. We'll have one side of that flange will be tapped with 1/4 by 28 threads per inch. And so I thermocycle these handles to soften them before machining. So here I am tapping through this, and you have to have a pretty sharp tap, and you have to be very careful when you're threading Damascus. It depends on how the orientation of the Damascus is, but twist Damascus can be really hard to tap as the cutter's engaging through the different layers. And it depends on the layer count and the orientation of the layers, but I had to go slow and tap this. Now here's it just mocked up with some regular 1/4 by 28 cap head screws just for a mock-up, just to check the fit. So I'm drilling now, back in the mill. I'm drilling for an index pin that's going to be a stopping point. So once you flip open the butterfly blade, that pin will keep it from over-rotating. But here it is, guys. It's getting close. Put a decent edge on this. I was a little cautious about putting a really nice edge on it. To be honest, I was afraid of flipping this thing over and cutting my fingers off. So now you do have to, I chose this method, you'll see here. I machined a groove on either side of the safe handle. So if you're familiar with butterfly knives, one blade that you never sharpen usually both edges. There's an edge, one edge is safe. And so I milled that slot so you could know which handle to flip open to keep from cutting yourself. So here's a stop pin that I'm machining. I'm profiling this, and then I'll part this off. You'll see that this will get pressed into a hole drilled in the blade that you just previously saw. So this little pin, and this was machined out of 4140 chromoly steel that was already heat treated. It already had like I think it was 38 or 40 on the Rockwell scale. So here it is. I have a little spacer here. I'm just going to press this into the blade. Here's this pin I just machined. And you have to be careful. This press will just crush that pin, right? So you have to be a little cautious when you're pressing this, but this is the finished pin here. And as it's pressed into place, it'll locate and keep those handles from over rotating. So here I am doing a heat treat on this. I got this to 1575, I believe. Now I did some thermal cycling on this to normalize it, stress relieve it, because the twist can really cause problems when you're quenching. But this came out perfectly straight, and I got a really good hardness on this blade. Now these pins, I'm going to be making my own pins out of Damascus and machining these. So I got some pretty high layer count stuff from the same material from the handles, and I'm drawing these down to roughly just under 1/2 inch in diameter. So here's this pin I drew out to a smaller diameter, and to preserve the pattern that's in it. Now I'm going to throw this in my lathe. I'm going to machine this little chunk of Damascus down here to the profile for the pins. So I'm just machining it, getting it ready to thread. I'm machining the shoulder for a very precise fit inside the handles, and then the head on it will also have. Now here I am doing some single pointing. I don't show all of this, guys, but this is a whole separate topic, threading on a lathe. But I'm just I got my lathe set up for 28 threads per inch. I got my major diameter machined onto the threads, and I'm just doing like 5 thou passes at a time here. So I think it took me 5 passes to get and I do a final cleanup pass, and then I have some threading files just to clean that up when I'm done. But this was 4 or 5 passes to cut this thread, and this insert handled the Damascus pretty easily. So, and then this is it after it's parted off on the lathe, and it just drops out, and the threads came out beautiful on this. Now I'm going to machine a square head on these so that I can tighten these with a wrench. And also this was difficult. I don't show this on the video, but I timed or clocked. I don't know, to be honest, I don't know the right term for this, but I machined these so that the angles are going to be symmetrical when they're installed in the knife. So here's the finished part. Now look at this, guys. I just pulled these out of the parkerizing tank. I parkerized these in my garage, and these came out beautiful. Now this parkerizing, I was just going to etch it, but I think the wear of manipulating it as you're flipping the butterfly knife would wear the etch. A lot of times you etch in ferric chloride, and it's really not a super durable. You can coat it with some wax after you're done, but anyway, so I parkerized these. And the parkerizing is very durable. And look, it came out a little darker, but this is what I want. I want this a multi-tone effect. The blade will be lighter than this, but look at this, guys. This finish is just phenomenal. Now I polished these up to like 400 grit before I put them in the parkerizing solution. But parkerizing, it uses manganese. Manganese phosphate is what I think is what they call the solution. But you heat it to 175 degrees, yeah, and it gets forms manganese. Is an oxide basically, but it's called parkerizing if you want to look it up. But this finish came out phenomenal. Now here it is after that. The previous shot, I just pulled it out of the park tank. Now after you parkerize it, you got to rinse it off, and then you oil it to kind of to seal that in. And so these are after oiling. So you can see here, this is after I've oiled it, and these just came out phenomenal. Look at how fine that pattern is, and there's a little bit of variation in it, and this finish is very durable, very durable. I love this the parkerizing. Now these are one of the bolts I acid, just a light dip in the ferric chloride, And look at the pattern on this. I really love the pattern on these little screws. Even on the end of the where the the end of the bolt basically has a little pattern on it. So I drew that down. If I hadn't drawn down that, it wouldn't have had preserved that smaller scale, that patterning in those bolts. But here I am just doing some. I'm gonna sand this up to 600 grit. I'm going to sand this blade up to 600 grit. And this has been tempered. I did 300 degrees at an hour was the temper for this. Um, and this blade came out perfectly flat. And so here it is after etch. I did a couple of etches in a lower concentration solution. Uh, and look at this, guys. This pattern came out. You see why I didn't want to hot form that edge? Look at the pattern at the tip of that blade. It just was so perfect. That's why I cut that off with the angle grinder. I wanted that shape on the tip of that, and it just came out just beautiful. I love the pattern on the edge, and it just is perfect. This is just the right contrast between the handles. I'm gonna have some finish shots coming out, guys. Check this out. The tone of these, I love how it came out different. Look at this. This is the finished blade. Now look at the gray scale or gray tone of the pins. See how they're clocked? They're mirror images of each other, and even the pattern is oriented properly on those pins. And the handles are darker with a finer pattern. There's a higher layer count in there, um, and then and just the scale of it. I love that. Uh, so there's a finer pattern on the handles. There's a bolder pattern on the blade. The action of this is perfect. Um, this thing flips. There's no play in the handles. The machining I did on the handles and getting the diameters right are perfect. There's actually some mylar washers on the one side of the in between the handle and the blade, and it it locks up perfectly tight. There's no play in these handles. When you flip it open, it's nice. This blade came out about 8.5 inches long, 8.5, 9 inches long. So I guess this is a little bit bigger than a normal butterfly knife. Um, but the action of this thing flips effortlessly. It locks up nice and tight. And to control when the blade closes, there's usually an index pin. I didn't want another pin higher up on the blade. I didn't like the aesthetic of it. So what I did is I pressed two Delrin. Delrin is a type of plastic. I pressed in two Delrin inserts inside the handles. So when the blade closes, it closes up against those inserts and the blade doesn't contact the handles. So it indexes on that pin. There's that groove there to let you know which side to grab when you flip it open. And here it is outside in some sunlight. And this blade just came out phenomenal. And normally I put a light coat of wax, very light coat of wax on the Damascus blade when I'm done. This helps prevent some corrosion that can happen because it is bare steel on Damascus. But I haven't. This blade does not have any wax on it, no coatings. This is just the bare steel. But parkerizing could have parkerized the blade too, but it would have been too dark. I love this. The blade is a lighter tone. The pins are a little bit of a mid in between the blade and the handle, and this handles came out nice and dark. And this texture, the parkerizing is just phenomenal on this. And the blade came out straight. All the machining on this was just perfect. I really took my time in getting this machining properly, all the machining set up, and I really like the different finishes on this. And I have to say, this is probably my one of my favorite knives I've done so far. I probably say that every time. And you'll see some close-up shots here. You can see I love the pattern on the side of the blade, the pins, and you can look. You'll see those plastic or those Delrin inserts inside the handles. Um, you'll see those here. Yep, those are pressed in place, and then there also was some epoxy. And yeah, that keeps that blade. It just locks up against those Delrin inserts. I love the blade peeking through there. It really is perfect. Um, how the blade peeks through. Thank you guys. I appreciate you guys watching this and tell me what you think. All right, stay safe out there.